Every Thursday, we drop an episode of Takedown with Chris Hansen. There is no shortage of episodes, unfortunately. There are so many more platforms out there today where children can be approached by adults.
I have found that 6th grade through 10th grade are vulnerable years.
I agree.
Parents need to understand exactly how it's happening because everybody, of course, does the, well, that's not going to happen to me.
Once they decide they're going to do it, there's very little that will stop them.
Today, we're going to talk about an incredibly, I would say, heavy and difficult topic, but an incredibly important one. If you're not familiar with the acronym CSAM, you will be today. And if you are familiar with the cases around Roblox and these technology platforms that are really creating a dangerous space for our children, this is a really important episode to listen to. Today, I'm sitting with MaryClare Malady from Child USA and the Chris Hansen from To Catch a Predator and a lot of other programming that over the years has just been targeting predators and protecting children. And today, I want to talk about what CSAM is, what the real danger is out there, and what we can do about it. So thank you both for being here today.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So let's just jump in. I think, Chris, what's some of the work that you've seen? We know your work from To Catch a Predator. We know the things you've been doing, but it's evolved over time. This is something you and I talked about before recording. What's happening out there and what's changing?
Every Thursday, we drop an episode of Takedown with Chris Hansen. That's the latest version of the Predator investigations. There is no shortage of episodes, unfortunately. So what we've been seeing is a continuing opportunity for predators to exploit children, and that is fueled because there are so many more platforms out there today where children can be approached by adults. And those include, as you mentioned, some of the video gaming platforms like Roblox, where adults can meet children, they can have an initial conversation, and in some cases, they can be taken to another platform, less regulated, and then to direct communications on a cell phone. And it's this grooming process that parents have to be aware of. The social science aspect of it is something that, Child USA is working to, show people in an effective way of how to deal with this issue.
I have so many questions on sort of those workflows because I think the parents need to understand exactly how it's happening because everybody, of course, does the, well, that's not going to happen to me. Before we get to that, though, MaryClare, I think that was a great point. Chris, talk about Child USA and the work you're doing, starting with the statute of limitation reform and then getting into the social science and that intersection of work that is so critical.
Great. I'm happy to. Our work is pivotal in all of the child mission areas. And Child USA is very unique because we are a think tank. And what that essentially means is that our social science research is so in-depth that our legal department can analyze that research and actually change laws to protect children, future child sex abuse victims, and survivors. And so we are behind the scenes. We are not a service organization. We're not a law firm, but our work does change laws. And we have changed the statutes of limitation reform. We have opened windows. We have also, our work has actually removed statutes of limitation in many states. And they have made changes in 36 states. And we are moving forward with all 50. So 36 states.
And for those that aren't familiar with the laws, statute of limitations limits when you can come forward after a crime is committed. And so the problem in child sex abuse is the age for the statute of limitation in most states is not actually based on when most children that become adults are ready to come forward. And so there's this mismatch where by the time survivors are ready to come forward, tell their story, the courts are just going arbitrarily, sorry, you're out of statute. There's nothing you can do now, which means predators stay on the street, which means survivors don't get justice. So really critical and pivotal work that you do and based on the data. So So Chris, kind of back to you here, thinking about your boots on the ground, you're seeing these things in these platforms, and you talked about that not only are they happening within Roblox, but they're transitioning to other platforms, right? What are you seeing that's
Well, one of the things going to the statute of limitations I'm seeing is that many times child victims are embarrassed. They don't want to admit that they were taken advantage of by a predator. At the same time, they don't want to go to their parents and say this happened because they don't want to get into trouble. And so they don't report it, which is why the statute of limitations reform is so critical.
Right.
Um,
And they suppress the
and
information.
they suppress the information and they just live with it. And this harms them for a long period of time, if
And
not
leads to
forever,
other
and leads to other
situations
situations in health conditions and everything else. So aside from the statute of limitations reform being so critical, the social sciences part of what you do to help inform children's parents about
Right.
this is important because parents need to create an environment where if a kid messes up, whether it's sextortion, whether it's being plied by a predator, you need to create an environment where the child can come to the parent and say, look, this happened. I'm embarrassed. I knew better, but help me to figure this out. And that help can be going to law enforcement. It can be finding a proper plaintiff's attorney to deal with it in a civil matter. But it really starts there. It all feeds
Right.
into what needs to be done to create justice.
Absolutely.
But it has a very important parental component. And I see victims who make situations worse. I see survivors and victims who get into very difficult situations because they didn't feel that they could go to their parents or to anybody else and report this.
Sure.
And that's why this work is so critical.
it's funny you say that. As a parent, right? The battle over screens is real. And so it never even occurred to me until you just said that, right? You have the sort of the stories that we know when Spotlight released, right, that these priests were doing this. And there's this hierarchical power. Like, I don't want to tell my parents that the priest did. There's that inherent, right? In the screen world, the battle is already with your parents because most of the time, most parents are going, get off of that iPad. You weren't supposed to be on it, right? You weren't supposed to be on your phone. So it's funny you say that, Chris, because it never even occurred to me that there's this inherent tug of war already happening. And now if a kid maybe was on a platform they weren't supposed to be on to begin with, right? Now it's double jeopardy. You don't want to tell your parents because of that. You don't want to tell because of the, and then again, the ramifications are most importantly, the health of this child, but that predator also stays out there. And potentially is going to assault our children. What do we do?
I am a mom of 3 grown boys, and even though the technology has changed since they were allowed to have a cell phone in the 6th grade, it was a flip phone, and then it went by the time the 3rd son, and they're all 2 years apart, he had an iPhone, and that made him instantly vulnerable. We started off with all phones in the drawer when you walked in the door. Well, then it advanced into, I need my calculator. I put my notes from school on my phone. And then you find yourself as a parent knowing that this is, I call it an out of family communication. And I've always said to my boys, no, just keep it within the family. Nobody needs to know our business. Now your child has an out of family communication that you're just not a part of. And you do find yourself giving a little inch and then another inch. And then all of a sudden your child is on websites. Now, luckily, when my boys went to college, they were in another sphere altogether and a little bit more mature. I have found that 6th grade through 10th grade are vulnerable years.
I agree.
They are impressionable. They want what this one has. They want to say what this one says. They want to wear the trend. Keep that family unit together. Keep the communication. If your child isn't talking for 3 hours, bust the door down. What are you doing? Who are you talking to? Keep that line of communication open through especially the formative years.
Absolutely. And kids need to know that they can come to you as a parent
Mm-hmm.
and say, I screwed up. Help me out of this.
Yes.
And you need to constantly preach that message. Like,
Mhm.
okay, here's the rules.
Right.
But if somebody violates the law trying to do something to you, that's a game changer.
Yeah.
And I will help you. And I will go to law enforcement on your behalf and get justice on this.
Mhm.
You got to get them on the same team. This isn't 10 years ago when you'd take a case like this to the local police department and they may say, well, we don't have the ability to do this. Law enforcement is eager
Yes.
to be in on this. They're eager
Mhm.
to catch a
Good point.
predator, to take down a predator. And if they can't do it, they have a relationship with ICAC, the Internet Crimes Against Children group affiliated with federal law enforcement.
Mhm.
They'll get it done.
Mhm.
There's been a sea change in the
Mhm.
attitude of law enforcement in the last 20 years. And we collaborate with law enforcement across the country. New agencies come online virtually every month with which we're working when we do
Mhm.
these takedown stings for True Blue, my streaming network. And so they're eager to do it. But most of the time, these problems happen because a child is afraid to admit that they've messed up. And we see this in sextortion cases.
Mhm.
We see this in predator cases. We see this with online gaming platforms. And,
Mhm.
most of these companies cooperate with NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. When they detect an inappropriate communication or inappropriate material being transmitted between an adult and a child, they have a duty to mandatorily report that.
Mhm.
But it slips under the
Sure.
carpet sometimes. And so you need to have mandatory reporting in your household.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree, and I don't mean to cut you off,
Yeah.
but I got wonderful advice when my boys were younger, and that is kids, they know when you're going to waver. And what I mean is if you have a rule about screen time, I had a very tight curfew until they graduated high school. You busted that curfew, you were not going out for the next weekend. Stay true to your word. Your children want that trust in you. And they, as I said before, they are vulnerable. And to your point, they want to tell you
Right.
if something is not, it does not feel
And
right
you
with
need
them.
to set the boundaries. Look,
Mhm.
nobody likes anyone who is arbitrary or capricious, right?
Mhm.
That doesn't work
Right.
on a lot of different levels. The Supreme Court has recognized that, right? So the court of your home has to recognize that as well. But if you say, look, this is the deal,
Mm-hmm.
and we can talk about it,
Yep.
that's it. That's the boundary.
Follow through.
Yeah.
I love that note about the boundaries. I think it's so critical. And I think that it's something that reinforces that for parents that might be listening to this as a preventative. I want to think about something else, which are patterns. There's a couple things that both of you have said that speak to kind of potential patterns, right? And some that aren't patterns and are kind of, I would say, random, and some that might be patterns. So one of the things is, and maybe you see this in the social science space, and you've seen this in the investigative and in these sting operations. Is there a pattern? And I'm kind of purposely asking this in a silly way because I kind of know the answer. Is there a pattern that you see in terms of who the predators are and where they're coming from? And is there a pattern you see in the age of children that are being targeted? Are there windows like a bell curve almost where you're seeing it, heightened at certain ages, et cetera? What are you seeing on both of those?
They'll target who's ever available, whether it's 12, 13, or 14, 15-year-olds. They'll justify what they want to do. We had a case recently in Marion County, Florida, where a guy who you would not pick out of a crowd, a contractor, agreed to meet someone he thought was the father of a 14 and 7-year-old son. He was going to get a chance to look at them at a Target store. It excited him. Then he thought he was going to go back to the family's home and with the father of these children sexually abuse the 7 and the 14-year-old. Now, this is stuff that we haven't seen before. And this is the fantasy that's fueled in some of these porn sites and CSAM and all the rest of it. But it's happening. So here we are on a Saturday afternoon, and this guy who's married, by the way, rolls up to the parking lot of a Target store in Marion County, Florida, thinking he's going to meet a like-minded father and abuse 2 children, 2 boys. And so you talk about patterns and what's happening. It's across the board. We've caught doctors, right? We've caught workaday guys. We've caught teachers. Another case, a teacher, second grade teacher, same county, most recent investigation. An author of child books is talking to somebody he thinks is a 15-year-old boy saying, does my age at 32 put you off? I mean, there's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
So, yes, it's out there. And it's all across the country. People say, where's the most active area? It's got to be Florida, right? For whatever reason, just because we work with 3 different jurisdictions in Florida. But it's East Coast, West Coast, North, South. We work all over the country, and it's the same.
So not really a pattern. So there seems to be like an age demographic that is targeted more, right? It's
13 to 15.
13 to 15. Okay.
And that would be illegal. We don't put decoys out there at 17, 18 because there's an age of consent there.
Right.
But, we'll see some people who really want to go young. The commonality or the trend, I guess, is that there is a pattern of grooming in terms of, hey, what are you doing? It says here you're 19. No, I'm actually 14 or 15. I just said that to get on this platform. Oh, well, never mind. You're too young. Stop. But what if I said this? Would you be okay with it? Oh, I don't know. What do you think? And it goes on from there. And these guys, once they get in their mind that there's the potential of sexually exploiting a 14-year-old child, they can't leave it alone. And so we see this constant justification in their mind to make it okay. How are these guys created? It's a lot of different ways. I wish I could give you one single point failure in the human condition as to why these guys are created. But I think it's way more complicated than that. But I can tell you that once they decide they're going to do it, there's very little that will stop them. And that's when we see them in our sting house.
Let me ask you a question. Is it, are they gender biased? Are they?
No, it depends. We see it both sides. It's about 50-50. Guys going for boys and guys going for girls.
So going back to that pattern conversation and disappointing answers a little bit, right? Because there's so much randomness, right? That you're hearing. So, we're not targeting to a trade or a tech. If we think about it from, I imagine after the fact, right? You do a sting operation, you catch somebody, now somebody's there. Is generally the reaction of everyone around them shocked? I can't believe it. You never would have thought of it with this person.
Well, there's a lot of that. And there's also, I knew it was just a matter of time. He was doing this or he was just hanging out here. He had made comments like this. So it's a combination. I mean, some guys come out of the blue and nobody ever suspected them. I mean, we had in a recent case, the local Santa Claus was arrested, a 68-year-old man. And his picture comes up in the chat. They identify who he is. I said, God, that guy looks like Santa Claus. And a detective from across the room in the chat room says, oh my God, that guy's been in my house. He was the local Santa Claus, right?
Wow.
And so he shows up to meet the dad and a 13-year-old girl. They've got this whole plan. He's been very graphic. And during the interview I conduct with him, I don't let on that I already know he's the local Santa Claus. I say, I can't help but noticing that you look a lot like Santa Claus. He looks over to me and says, I am Santa Claus. I mean, this guy's got kids on his lap for 20 years.
Wow.
Drives around in a red SUV. And postscript to that, 2 months later, his brother, who's 61 years old, gets arrested in a local Walmart for exposing himself and masturbating in front of a woman and her young child. I mean, you can't make this up. It's shocking because it seems to be never ending. So I hope that these investigations we do, I know the work Child USA does prevents some of this activity. And at least we're creating awareness and a dialogue and encouraging people to do what needs to be done to report this, to be aware. But back to the social sciences part of this, as a think tank, you're allowing victims, survivors, lawyers, even guys like me who are journalists, to have access to information that is helpful in creating this content, in seeking justice,
And to understand.
and to understand the crime and the criminals,
Mhm.
right? Which is all important. But I can tell you this, if you look at the Epstein case, the P. Diddy case, the R. Kelly case,
Mhm.
what did they all have in common? There was civil lawsuit action, intense media coverage that led to criminal prosecution. And without the first two, we may have not seen the ultimate justice in the criminal justice system. So it
You're right.
takes a partnership here
Mhm.
and to work together on some of this stuff.
Let's go a little deeper in that partnership. MaryClare, talk a little bit about the social sciences, because I know even from talking to you that there's even the way that we support survivors and victims after they've come forward, that there's
Mhm.
data and research on the best practices for that, which I imagine is going to lead to better outcomes when you're seeking justice. What are some of the principal things that are there any, obviously there's so many details, I'm sure you can't list them all, but what are some, key points that would be really valuable for people to understand that have come out of the social science research from Child USA?
The first thing that we do talk about at Child USA is the resources are there. And we're developing what we use as toolkits. And it meets the 3 criterias that survivors want. They want the information. They fear that they don't know where to look. They want to understand the law. They feel that it's over their head. And they want the resources for a survivor, it's dual. It's the law and how do I heal?
Mm.
Which one do I do first? Can I do one without the other? And ultimately the answer is no, but they want those 3 answers. They want to understand the law, they want the resources, and they want more knowledge. And so that's at Child USA, that's what we give them.
Yeah.
We give them the why, the how with our legal, and the who. Who can help us change these laws for the survivors? And that's legislation. And those 3 work hand in hand at Child USA.
And that's one of the issues, right? I don't think people know where to go or what to do. How do you start it? I mean, if you don't know a top plaintiff's lawyer, well, you're just going to go through the directory on Google?
Sure.
Maybe.
Mhm.
If you don't know how to initiate a conversation with your children, it's hard to start it. People are busy. So groups like Child USA, especially Child USA, provide a lot of resources for a lot of different people to get to the ground root issues here,
Mhm.
the systemic issues here, and to really make a change or start to make a change. Look, it's a big issue. Look what we do. We every month we're out on a sting.
Mhm.
Every Thursday, an episode drops on True Glue without fail. My production schedule is so far ahead. I mean, it's shocking we have that many episodes.
Just because you have a backlog?
Just because we have a backlog of cases.
Mhm.
We combine predators into an episode. We have so many. And each one of them tells a different story and creates a different narrative as to, 1, how this guy became a predator, and 2, how somebody could become a victim survivor.
Mhm.
And we try to show how to prevent that in each episode.
And that's a very big key, is the preventing.
It's awareness.
Mhm.
I think that would be the ideal, right? If we could
Of course.
prevent all of this,
Yep.
and that's the education. You mentioned something a second ago. I've got an 11-year-old, right? Your boys are older now. When do we start having these conversations?
The moment they have access to the internet.
Mhm.
And I believe, and MaryClare knows more about this than I do, but I believe personally as a parent, my kids are, older now, that you have to start with, look, there are grownups on the internet who like to trick children. Children inherently don't like to be tricked. And so you start with that, and then you have to ratchet up the conversation as you think is appropriate based upon your child's age and your knowledge of that child.
It's interesting that you say that because having 3 boys, I do remember the conversation, when do we talk to them about sex?
Yeah.
When is it too soon? When are they gonna be scared? But you say to yourself, "This is a very important topic. Why don't we sit down at the dinner table and talk about how vulnerable they can be?"
Right.
And I had read a couple of times, we raise our children to be kind and nice, and don't be unkind to that person. Well, they
Yeah.
need to be on the defensive
Well,
these
I think the
days,
other thing, the critical
unfortunately.
thing is, when we were growing up, when I was growing up, the rule was don't talk to strangers. Well, it was good advice then. It's good advice today. But the problem is
It's not strangers, right?
the guy who starts out as a stranger on a Wednesday has groomed himself
Mhm.
into being a friend or to be somebody who your child seems to trust by Friday.
Mhm.
And that's the key. I mean, I would make the rule, and again, my kids were out of the danger zone by the time a lot of this stuff started happening. We had World of Warcraft, that was it. And I'd say, hey, it's time for bed. Well, I can't. The guys are dependent. Well, who are those guys? Get to bed, and that was the end of it. We
Sure.
didn't have all the access with flip phones,
Mhm.
and laptops or the desktop. But if you don't know that person in real life, you don't know them online.
Mhm.
And so who is that? Jeff from Vancouver. Or I don't know who Jeff from Vancouver is.
Sure.
Right.
And it could be a fat man sitting in his underwear in his mother's basement, surrounded by empty pizza boxes, trying to trick you into sending an inappropriate picture of yourself.
Sure.
And I don't think, even though that sounds kind of humorous to kids, I don't think that image goes away.
Yeah.
So you have to paint an image in their mind that is a reminder creatively of what can happen. And that's the sort of thing that sticks with you.
Sure. And accessibility. Now, I'm not a perfect parent, and of course,
is.
my boys in their 20s, mid to late 20s, but there were no televisions in the room. I knew what they were watching. There were workstations
Right.
in the home. There were no laptops in the bedrooms. Now, that was just because I wanted a family environment. We did not have that, in the early 2000s when my children were starting school. But it's still a good rule today.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things I would mention, just as a footnote, is we've been focusing on the stranger danger, the outside predator, the digital environment, and those opportunities and how to prevent it. We haven't talked at all about the physical, the in-person interactions, the coach, the
Sure.
things that Child USA kind of started in, right?
Sure.
And the family member, right? The relative.
All of which are still critically important
Yes.
because I think if you were to do the math, you're still just as likely to be
assaulted,
abused
right.
or exploited by somebody who's tangentially related to the family or somebody who's in that space that you just mentioned.
So really,
So you have to be very careful along those lines. But I think if you do find that there's a coach, for instance, engaging this sort of behavior, you're also going to see that guy engaging that sort of behavior online too.
Right. So you
That's a good
think
point.
that goes with
I think there's linkage there.
I feel like we didn't pick up on too many patterns. It's been kind of hopeless, to be honest with you. But we have some opportunities for
Right. But I think just by
Yeah.
discussing it, you win, right?
yeah.
Of course.
You're going to prevent somebody from becoming a victim or survivor by discussing it.
Yep.
By engaging in this conversation, by engaging in the social science as part of this, about encouraging survivors to come forward, by not limiting the amount of time a survivor has to come forward to report this. I mean, that's why we have a civil court system, right?
Yes.
And so they need to hold these people accountable. Otherwise, they know that they can run out the clock and get away with it.
Right. Because even if you catch them,
They can buy it
Right.
off.
Sure.
Right.
And these people need to be held accountable.
well, I was going to say even if you catch them, but unless you catch them in the act, right, then there's
Right. And by the way, as we've said, the civil actions create the template for the criminal actions.
Give me that. I just want people to understand that one more time. Explain that, how that works.
In many cases involving sexual exploitation, it's the civil lawsuit seeking punitive damages, financial damages for activities of a predator. that leads to a criminal investigation. In other words, a federal agency may not see this, but when they have this work already done by a civil lawyer, they suddenly have the opportunity to take it a step further and create a criminal prosecution. And we've seen that in Epstein. We've seen that in P. Diddy. We've seen that in R. Kelly.
Yeah.
And also when reporters stay on top of this stuff, it creates awareness. The U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York said in the news conference when they announced the indictment of Jeffrey Epstein that case wouldn't have happened without the work of Julie K. Brown and the Miami Herald. He said that. So this isn't me bragging on another member of my profession. That's the truth.
But I think it says a lot about the importance and the intersection of the work that you are all doing in this space.
That's my point.
And
It's like you got to team up on some of this stuff.
And I think that's what I love, and I'm so grateful to have both of you in the studio today to talk about this, because the work that you're doing, while it's hitting this from different angles, they're critical, and where they intersect is where I think justice happens, right? And so before we end today, I just want to give you both an opportunity to kind of spotlight the work that you're doing, your organizations, the things you're doing on an ongoing basis. And either you can take the forum right now. I'll start with you, Chris, and then let's end with you, MaryClare and Child USA. Chris, what are the things that you're doing right now? Where can people find you and continue this good work?
Well, I'm very blessed to have my own streaming network in True Blue. Right, so people can go to watchtrueblue.com. That's TrueBLU. We have a massive number of subscribers. We have YouTube channels, and that's where we do the takedown predator investigations, where we work with law enforcement around the country. We also produce documentaries like Dangerous Games on Roblox. We've got one coming out on sextortion. We've got a number of other documentaries in the works. And you'll see those on True Blue as well as other networks and platforms. I have 2 podcasts, Predators I've Caught, where we go back over the previous cases and tell people where they're at today, and have a Seat with Chris Hansen, which is more of an interview program like this, where I have a lot of people in this space who are doing this kind of work. But one of the reasons I'm able to feed this gaping maw of content that I put out every week is that I have relationships with organizations like Child USA. And not only do I get ideas and leads and information, I get intelligence, which creates contacts and context in terms of knowing who to go to get information on these cases, whether it's looking back at Larry Nassar, whether it's looking forward to other cases that are in the works. John Manley, who's a plaintiff's lawyer, who you probably know, was on my podcast the other day and said that 47 million children each year experience inappropriate sexual advance contact from a school employee. That's 10%. And that's not just a plaintiff's lawyer saying it. This is the Department of Education and the Department of Justice of our government.
So that means somebody had to come
47 million is the estimate every year.
So that is an estimate, or is that based on people coming forward? How does that?
That's based upon what they know in terms of people coming forward.
Wow.
And so, what are we doing at the level of our schools? What are we doing to make sure we screen school employees? Are teachers' unions supporting the effort to root out this sort of bad behavior? Or are they defending the bad behavior because they're supposed to defend their fellow teachers? It's different from district to district. And I'm not pretending that just because we've identified a number, it's an easy solution. But by talking about it, exposing it, we take a very important first step.
And being shocked.
And being shocked by it.
Yeah. And I think that brings us into the think tank, right? And the work that you're doing. And so that number is still staggering. I'm almost like out of words right now. I'm just
imagine the first time I heard
year.
it.
Right, because you also filtered it down to at schools. Like it wasn't holistically.
No.
This is in one narrow niche.
School employees.
I mean, it's,
and that could be a teacher, a principal, a coach, a janitor, whatever.
Sure. But I'm not a statistician, and but that sounds like epidemic numbers to me. MaryClare, I think in your world, you're putting out this content. True Blue, we'll put up the URL on the video here, and in the description. For you, MaryClare, in the nonprofit space as a think tank working what resources can people go to get from Child USA, and how do they support Child USA to continue to give this breadth of knowledge and information that's going to ultimately lead to better outcomes?
So Child USA has had an incredible decade, and we have developed a foundation to become the experts in child sex abuse. We have a statutes of limitation tracker that's updated every week for everyone, survivors, journalists, attorneys, to go to find the most up-to-date. We have a treatise that has the history of statute of limitation reform. All of this is going to aid survivors in the ultimate goal for justice and the attorneys that support them. In the next decade, we plan to truly dig into the CSAM issue. We started dabbling about 4 years ago, and that's what we see in the next decade. Our resources will also be virtual. They're virtual on the website, and they will also be accessible to survivors. And we're taking advantage of our own resources as the behind-the-scenes think tank. We are taking advantage of our social science research, our law, and we support with briefs and with the history. So we're in a really great place. ChildUSA.org, of course, donations, but we have a large fundraiser in November, and I'm delighted that Chris Hansen
I'm honored.
is our Child Protector Award honoree this
Amazing.
year, November 6th, and it's a 10-year anniversary celebration.
Fantastic.
Yeah, to continue our work into the next decade.
It's been an incredible decade, incredible work.
Thank you.
I think that anyone who's watching this should definitely go subscribe to True Blue, go to childusa.org, learn this information. I mean, look, I think that one of the things I can say we definitively took away from this conversation is that this is a huge issue. It is continuing to grow. Something we talked about.
It's not going away.
It's not going away. And in the same way that we see this in almost all criminal activity, right? The criminals, as the technology evolves, right? It's this race between law enforcement. The good guys and the bad guys are always just trying to duke it out to see who gets ahead. And I think that taking those proactive steps, I think while a lot of things sounded really scary here, I think there's a lot of proactive steps we can take right away to attack this issue. So I want to thank both of you. Congratulations on the honoring.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm very honored too.
And MaryClare, thanks for
welcome.
Putting this all together. So
This is a pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, John.
I think the coolest thing about video podcasting is that it is a workflow game changer. I'm John Sherman, founder here at Video City Productions. We've been doing video here since 2008, long time. And one of the things we've learned is that most videos are going to have a long process. What video podcasting does is it shrinks that pre-production process, makes it much more easy to just pick a topic, maybe have a couple outline points. The production process, shorter, easier. Just sit down in a turnkey studio like ours and talk. And then that post-production process. Not only are those things faster to cut, you can also generate all of this short-form content very easily from 1 hour of talking. Is video podcasting the end-all be-all? Of course not when it comes to content creation. But is it an absolute workflow game changer? Absolutely. If you like this video and you're considering video podcasting or doing any video project, click the link in the description or visit videocityinc.com.